Hello! So this is going to be a video looking at these ridiculous new knife law sort of things they've said about it, with knives that are harmful by design and knives that are not harmful by design, or knives that are intended for dangerous use by design and knives that are not intended for dangerous use. So there was a big petition I signed, lots of other people signed it because of, how bad it is for sites selling knives, like the trouble they might get into. Basically the government wants to put legislation through so you can't order knives online to be delivered to your house unless they fit into certain categories. So on the left I have the category that will be allowed, pretty much. So basically the knives on the left are ones that, under the new legislation by the sound of it, you would be able to order to your house online with no age checks. However, the knives on the right would be required to be ordered into a post office or similar, so somebody could check your age when you pick up the knife. So, this is the absurd thing of the logic. It's that these knives apparently can't cause harm because they're not intended to cause harm, because they're intended for cutting up meat or other things in the kitchen, whereas these general utility knives on the right are considered to be harmful because, I guess, they're by design, they make the user want to stab somebody. It's very, very odd. So, obviously some of these knives would be more dangerous than others on the left, but as you can see, the big meat knives and probably this big knife here would be very dangerous. Even like the little steak cutting knives for on the table, that would be obviously efficient enough if you stab somebody, especially if you ground the tip a little bit more to make it sharper. But it doesn't even need a point on a knife to be able to stab somebody fatally. So the logic is somehow that these knives, because they're intended originally for kitchen use, people can't use them in crimes, despite the statistics saying something like 90+% of all stabbings are carried out with kitchen knives, something I've covered many times and lots of other channels have covered many times, because the problem is that I don't know if there's a very accurate way you can get these statistics, but generally if you ever look on any of the news reports, a police person will always be quoting as saying a majority of knives, a vast majority of knives, nearly all knives, are kitchen knives, these sort of knives used in stabbings. Reasons we've been over many times, they're very cheap to buy often in multi-packs. You're going to have them in your kitchen drawer anyway. Most people have several kitchen knives in their house, if not more. So if you're a teenager and sort of a gang member and you want to go out and stab somebody, the easiest thing to do is take a knife out the drawer that's already in your house, or just buy or steal very cheap knives from the supermarket or another shop. Because bear in mind, lots of shops for about £1 you could buy a knife like this, or maybe even a pack of knives like this. So if your intention was to arm as many people as possibly for the cheapest amount possible, just to stab somebody to death and throw away the knives, these are the sort of knives you'd use. Whereas generally knives like this actually cost a bit more because they're intended for a bit heavier duty use. Now the reason the potato peeler is sitting weirdly in the middle is because somebody was arrested and charged for actually having a potato peeler in their pocket in a public place. So I'm not really sure how that fits into the law. Is this a deadly assault peeler? Or is it just considered safe? I don't actually know. Maybe it's police discretion. But as it stands, as far as I can understand from this new wording of the law, the knives on the left you could order to your house with no age checks, and that's totally okay. The knives on the right, you'd need all their age checks applied to it. So let's have a look at why these knives are more dangerous. Well, this one has a lock on it, so actually those three all have locks on them. So this one's actually under 3 inch, but because it locks, it's considered by UK law to be not legal for everyday carry unless you can give a very good reason for having it. Those are over 3 inches and they lock, but the open L is funny because it's got that little collar lock, not an automatic lock. Apparently some police will let you off having them. So the weird situation is you could be carrying an open L that's longer than 3 inches and it locks, but police are more likely to look favourably on it because, it's a boring wood-looking pocket knife. So because it's something your granddad might have had in his pocket, it's like a peasant knife, it's a penny knife. They're weirdly looked on more favourably, which is kind of this stupid assault rifle kind of logic again. If it looks tactical, it's more likely to look scary and therefore, get you in trouble than if it's actually a more effective blade, but, got wood on or something like that, which is silly. So there's also like sort of just a generic, what I'd call a sheath knife or a field knife, knife that you could skin an animal with or just do basic field craft with. And on the right there's a knife, which is more like a utility builder's knife. You actually see that there's some tar on it kind of stuff, where I was using it to cut pitch tape, and that stuff is impossible to wash off the blade after you've cut it. But the point is that, you know, these knives on the right aren't really, of course, any deadlier. I'd say most of these are less deadly because the blades are smaller. But how the law obviously stands is that these knives now, for some reason you don't need age verification on. Because we're in this very weird situation where, despite these knives being used in the vast majority of killings and stabbings, these are ones that the new laws won't apply to. Because these laws are written by idiots, and they're also, I believe, doing this on purpose. It's a form of tyranny, where, you know, because they don't want the mentality of people having knives and outdoor stuff, as Jack Stryker very rightly said in one of his videos, they want to completely kind of destroy the mindset of survivalism and people, you know, doing stuff for themselves. They'll apply the laws far harsher to, you know, perfectly reasonable fieldcraft outdoor kind of knives more than they would to stuff like this. Because obviously, it should come as no surprise to any of you, if you're intelligent people, that if somebody intends to stab you to death, it doesn't really matter what the knife's handle looks like or anything else. If it's a sharp blade with a fair bit of length to it, that can be used to kill you just as easily as any other knife. Yes, I'm sure there are some knives which are more efficient at killing than others, but if somebody stabs you 10 times, it really doesn't matter which of these knives they use. All of them would do the job pretty effectively. So there we go, this is the absurd new logic. The knives on the left can be ordered without ID as it stands under the new law from how it reads, but of course it's very vague, so I might be wrong about this, but it's vague on purpose, I think, to make the law hard to understand for a normal person, therefore they can trip you up with it more easily. But the knives on the right, they're intended for violence, or more likely to be intended for bad things, so the laws don't cover this. Very weirdly, it seems that kitchen knives are more exempt than gardening knives and lots of things like that. So for whatever reason, kitchen knives are just the ones that get away with it all the time. So hopefully you found this sort of interesting, but there you go. If you wanted to order lots of knives without ID, what you'd need to do is buy these sort of knives, because apparently, I mean, some delivery companies and sites, you know, might do the reasonable thing and actually ask for ID for these knives. I think Amazon does, so good on them. But the point is that, you know, for whatever reason, the government considers these to be knives that are exempt for some reason. Because, you know, these can't hurt people, because they... See, none of these knives were made with the intention of stabbing people, this is the thing. I don't have any bayonets here or any, like, commando knives. Yeah, apparently those knives on the right were made with the intention of causing harm, and these knives on the left were made without that intention, and because their intention isn't there, they can only be used for their actual, manufactured uses. That's very, very odd, isn't it?